using the Vanishing Point tool to add perspective and the Perspective Warp tool. Let's start with the Perspective Warp. This allows you to adjust the perspective, particularly in an image that has straight lines or flat surfaces. So to utilize this, it's always a really good idea to make a copy of your layer. What I'm going to do is go under the Edit menu and choose Perspective Warp. Now there are two steps here, and a little tool tip will pop up to help you go through the steps. I'm going to close this because it kind of is in my way. So what I'm going to do is click and drag a grid. Now this doesn't match the grid of my building, obviously, so I'm going to take these pins and I'm going to try to align it the best I can with the edges or some point on my building. So in this case, I'm going to take it over to here, and the end of this will be probably somewhere in here. As you can see, I'm looking at my roof line and my line of windows. So now that you have applied your grid, you're going to click Warp up in the top corner. And once you have the warp, you can adjust the pins to correct this perspective. Now I'm going to end up with some empty space because there's no information on my picture, but look at what this is doing. So it's taking my perspective of my original picture and completely changing it. This is the area I was talking about. There are no information available for Photoshop to even try to add to that area, so that's why we get that. So if I kind of just take this down, you can see I have completely changed the perspective of the building. Now note in the windows, obviously weird things are happening because I twisted this so much. This is an extreme example. But look at how easy it is to correct your perspective using the Perspective Warp. If this is what I want, I can click OK, and there it is, and it's done. Okay, so that's a way that we can do perspective warps. Onto the Vanishing Point. I'm going to use this picture of the barn. So the Vanishing Point allows me, again, to create planes, just as I did in the Perspective Warp, that I can use to visually adjust the perspective caused by, the width, the height, and the depth. So I can really do some really cool things with this. And the number one thing to remember, again, is to always work off of a new layer. Never work off of your original. So I'm going to take this layer and I'm going to duplicate it. And we're going to turn this one off and keep it for safekeeping. So in the Vanishing Point, we are going to take other elements and bring them into the proper perspective for this picture. So I'm going to create a new layer. It's always good to work off of a brand new layer here. Go under the Filter menu, and we're going to choose Vanishing Point. Here it is. This is my Vanishing Point dialog box. I do have some Vanishing Point tools over here on the far left at the top. Things like the selection tool here. I have my plane tool to create a plane tool. The top one was really for some editing. And I have the marquee tool. I have a stamp tool, I have a brush tool, I have a transform tool, an eyedropper tool, a measure tool, a hand tool, and a zoom tool. Some of these are grayed out right now, meaning that they are not currently available with what I have going on at the moment. So again, I need to create an initial plane. And I'm going to do that by already, Photoshop has given me that tool as being active. And I'm going to click and drag. Try to be as straight as you can. Okay, so there's my plane. Now these planes are color coded, meaning that when I see blue, that means the perspective is correct. When I see a red, that means the drawn perspective is not possible. And when I see a yellow, it indicates that the perspective probably unlikely. So if I again go and create another grid, I can create multiple grids here, or multiple planes. If I do something crazy, notice how that one turns red. So that tells me probably not possible. If I go a little bit and drag this now, and I'm using that top tool, there it turns to blue. That works. Here's a yellow. Highly unlikely that this is true. Okay, so you can get all of the different ways here. And these are, like I said, they can be altered and changed. The active plane is the one that shows a grid. Now we're using a copy and paste here. I want to copy something into my clipboard and then paste it onto the grid. I cannot get to any other items here while I'm in this vanishing point. So what I'm going to have to do is abandon this so I can get something in my clipboard. And let me do that. Copy. It's in my clipboard. Now let's go back to the barn. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to go back under filter and a vanishing point. So it's a good idea to make sure that you have set your item in your clipboard before you even go into the vanishing point. So here I get a yellow this time because I probably don't have things quite lined up. And so it's saying, gosh, it's kind of not right. By dragging a few of these items, I probably can move this into something that will work. And let's just kind of adjust things here. I'm not sure what's throwing it off. We're going to go with it. In some cases, it'll let me continue with it. Sometimes it doesn't. So now with that being active, I'm going to do a Control or Command V to paste it. And what happens is my item is pasted. It initially will float on top until I pull it in the right frame or the right plane. So it defaults at the top left. This is normal. Once I drag it into a plane, here you go. You can see that now it's on this in the correct perspective. And I can now use my transform if I want, so I can try to transform this. If I get the bounding box, remember always hold down your shift key so that you don't distort any kind of proportion. And we'll just go with the Ridgewater College. We'll cut off that bottom part. If this is what I want, I can click OK. There are some other editing tools here. I can paint if I want, flip it. I can do a lot of different things. I'll click OK. And see how that now is on its own layer. So I did not destroy the original per se. I used it for a plane, and now here a new layer with that item from my clipboard pasted in to the vanishing point. One more example here. Let's go to the car. Again, I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to go to the filter and vanishing point. I'm going to draw my plane. This time we could do something pretty crazy like on the hood. I get the blue indicating that this perspective plane is good. In my clipboard, I should still have the Ridgewater logo, so I'm going to go ahead and paste. Remember, it always will default to that top left corner. Drag it in, and in this case, it went kind of at the wrong angle. So let's go ahead and rotate that. I can go to my transform and I can rotate it. I can click and drag as it says. I can flip or I can flop. I'm going to grab a corner here, and your tools are going to feel a little off. And let's say we want it right like that. I'm going to do a little bit of scaling here. So I'm going to grab a corner, and I still want to hold shift even though you feel like it's kind of at a really weird angle. Okay, and I think we're just about fitting it there. We can bring it down there. If that's not quite right, we can move it a little bit. And go to my selection tool. I can see it a little bit easier. Click OK. And there I have it. So now I have that logo on the hood of the car. And again, it's on its own layer, so I can turn it on, I can turn it off. So you get the idea of the really cool things you can do with this vanishing point filter. Just remember to make a new layer and have something in your clipboard.